In this video, I'm going to show you my Jun or Jun, I'm actually not sure how it's pronounced, brewing process. And specifically, I'm going to be splitting this SCOBY into two because it's grown quite large. And I'm going to double the amount that I'm producing. So instead of making 1 gallon, I'm going to start making 2 gallons. Now, if you don't know, Jun or Jun is like kombucha, but it's green tea and honey instead of black tea and sugar. So that's what I prefer to make it. I think it tastes delicious, and I'm going to show you how you can too. So the first thing you want to do is you want to get your water boiling for your tea leaves. Now in this cup, this is the tea that I'm going to be splitting into both 2-gallon new batches of Jun. So I'm just going to make it in a small amount of water because I want to dilute it with cooler water because I can't put the SCOBY into the boiling hot water or it's going to kill those beneficial bacteria and yeast. So in here I have 6 tablespoons of loose leaf green tea leaves, organic green tea leaves. For me, I get the gunpowder green tea leaves, and I get specifically the loose leaf, and I don't open up tea bags because it's a much higher quality and less likely to have molds and other things in it. So if you're making 2 gallons like I am, you're going to put 6 tablespoons in here, and I'm going to turn on my hot water. And this is the trick. If you have a thermometer, you want to measure it, which I do have one, but the battery died. But you don't want to brew green tea in fully boiling water because it can actually burn the tea leaves. So I'm going to stop this right before it gets to boiling. Ideally, you want it to be around 170 degrees. I've got my hot water here. I stopped it kind of just before it boiled. I'm just going to circulate a little bit, cool it off slightly. Like I said, I don't know exactly what temperature it is. Usually I measure it, but I just don't want it to be at a full boil because it can make the tea a little bit bitter. So what I'm going to do here is just pour over. This is going to be diluted into each gallon container, so it doesn't really matter how much you do, just enough that it can steep, and then you're going to add the honey to this as well. So I'm going to do just there, and I'm going to put the timer on for 15 minutes. And I'm going to cover this so that it can steep properly, and I'm just going to set it to the side here. Now, in the meantime, what I'm going to do is take this batch of kombucha I've got brewing, and I'm going to start it on its second fermentation, or Jun. I call it kombucha, but it is Jun. And so I'm going to start it on its second fermentation. The second fermentation is sealed, and this is what gives it its carbonation. So I have my gallon glass jar that has a special lid, which makes an airtight seal, and I have my funnel. And what I'm going to do is just put all of this brew into here. Now, usually I would retain 2 cups to be the starter for the next batch, but I've actually been having a little bit of trouble with my Jun. It hasn't had quite the amount of carbonation that I'd like, and so what I did is I bought 2 kombuchas from the store, and I'm going to be using this as fresh starter. So I'm not going to be retaining that extra 2 cups, but usually what you would do so you don't have to purchase kombucha from the store as a starter is you just save 2 cups from your last brew. Here we go. This is the SCOBY that I'm going to split into and put into my new each gallon kombucha jars to brew, or Jun jars to brew my next batch. I'm just going to set this to the side right now. It's fine for it to sit there without the juice for, a few minutes, an hour, however long it takes you. Now, what I have prepared is 2 cups of apple juice with some ginger in it as well that I juiced myself in my juicer. What I didn't get a chance to do yet that I'm going to do now is scoop this foam off the top because I don't want, it doesn't really matter, it can be in there, I just like to scoop it off. I'm going to pour this in here. This was the juice of 3 apples and several big pieces of ginger because I like it really gingery. And it's actually not too strong. A lot of people drink it that don't like super strong ginger flavor. So now is where I hit a little bit of a time crunch. Now that I've put the juice in there, and you can use whatever juice you like for whatever flavor you want. Right now apples are in season and I really like the ginger flavor. But now that that sugar is in there, because there's sugar, natural sugar in the fruit juice, it's starting to eat up that sugar and it's going to turn it into carbonation. So I want to get this airtight lid on here as soon as possible. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more honey because it will eat up that sugar in the honey. I found when I don't use the honey, it doesn't get quite enough carbonation for me. So I want to put that little bit of extra sugar in there just to make sure it's extra carbonated. And it's going to eat it up in the fermentation process. So it's not like there's still going to be a bunch of sugar in what I'm drinking. For this gallon amount, I'm going to do about a 1/4 cup of honey. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to mix it with a little bit of warm water so it dissolves more easily into there. So I'm going to take my honey. I use raw honey, so it has extra benefits in it. Now I'm going to take my water. It's definitely still warm, but it's not boiling anymore at all. I don't want to use super boiling water because I don't want to kill the enzymes in the honey. So I'm just going to mix a little water in there. And I'm going to mix up this honey and water so it's a nice liquid, and the honey is just going to blend into the rest of the into the juice and tea here. So once I seal this, I'm gonna leave it for 3 days. If you're in a super warm climate, maybe 2 days. You're gonna have to test it out for how it works for you. But for me, I find 3 days for the second fermentation is best. I'm going to just add this. And I've got it here, so there's definitely a little bit of air because there's going to be a lot of pressure created with all that carbonation, but I don't want so much space that it's not going to become carbonated. That's why I said we're in a little bit of a time crunch, because now that that carbonation is being created, if it's not sealed, it's going to escape out. So I want to get this thing sealed on here nice and tight, and this stage is done. I'm just gonna go set it on the counter where it will sit for 3 days. While I'm waiting, this tea has 3 more minutes to finish steeping. I'm just gonna go over a few other flavors that I've done. Like I said, that was 2 cups of apple plus some ginger juice, but it's not an exact science. That's just the amount of apple juice that I found I like to use. But in the summer, when berries are ripe, sometimes I'll just mush up a whole pack of blackberries and I'll put that in there, and it leaches all the juice out of it. By the end of the 3 days, the berries are completely white because it's leached all the juices out of it. I really like blackberry lime. I like cherry lime, cherry lemon are a lot of the summer flavors I like to do. So you really can get creative with it, whatever flavors you like. And one more thing I forgot to mention from the beginning of the video, when I took this old batch, the first fermentation, usually I would say it takes 5 to 7 days, again, depending on the temperature. But what you want to do is just taste it, and it should still have some sweetness, but also have a vinegary acidic taste. I have let mine sit too long on accident, and all the sweetness was gone, and it just tasted super vinegary. And even adding the fruit juice and honey into the second fermentation, it just wasn't right. I didn't even want to drink it. So you really want to make sure when you're switching from the first fermentation to the second fermentation that the batch has still retained some sweetness and it's not overly vinegary. So I like to take a taste on the 4th day just to kind of see. There's my timer for the tea, just to kind of see where we're at. And then I just usually, depending on the level of sweetness it is, I check it, in the morning and at night, every day after that, until it's where I like it to be. Now that the timer has gone off, I'm going to take this plate off of my tea here. And what I want to do is, because this is the amount of tea leaves for both gallons, I'm going to split this equally in between each gallon. And what's super neat on these jars is it has the measuring amounts right on there, so I will know that I've put an equal amount in. And I have my tea strainer just on top here, so I'm not going to get any leaves into there. I'm just going to use a spoon to push down on my tea leaves and really strain all that tea out of there. Spilling a little bit on my counter, that's okay. Okay. I want to add a cup of honey to each of these, but I don't want to do it while it's so hot still, because again, I have raw honey, so I don't want to kill the enzymes in the honey. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this measuring cup and just add a cup or 2 of lukewarm water, so it's still warm but not so hot anymore that I can then add the honey. I just added 1 cup of cool water to each of these gallons because I wanted to cool the honey enough, not the honey, it will cool the liquid enough that it's not going to kill the enzymes in the honey, but so it will still be warm enough that the honey will dissolve easily into it. So I'm going to measure 1 cup of honey. Okay, my first cup of honey is going in here. And I want that full cup of honey in there. All right, now I'm going to measure for the second. I've got my second cup of honey. I'm just gonna stir this honey to dissolve it. What I'm going to do next is fill the rest of this most of the way with just regular room temperature water. I'm going to use my sink because I live on a well and my water is tested, but if you have city water, definitely don't use that. Get purified water from the store. Now, each gallon of Jun needs 2 cups of starter. So this is where I had previously mentioned I would have retained the starter from this. But like I said, I wanted to get a fresh starter in mind just because I've been having a little trouble with the carbonation. So I'm going to use these ones that I got from the store. I'm going to put 1 bottle into each of these. This next step is where I'm going to split the SCOBY. So I'm going to pick it up. And I had already noticed it had different layers when it was in there, and it splits quite easily. They're kind of each their own disc. So there's the one. I'm going to put it in there. This other one is definitely smaller, but I think it will. It's still a disc. Those holes, it will grow back. I'm going to put it in there. Now, when you first... SCOBY. What is important to note right now is that they look kind of funny in there. Your SCOBY may drop to the bottom. It may be folded on its side. Give it some time. It will smooth itself out. It will rise to the top and it will cover the top. So these have just kind of been disturbed. They've been split in half, but by tomorrow morning, I'm sure they'll be covering the top nicely. And there was just a little bit of extra juice in here. So, or tea, it's not juice, it's tea. I'm just going to split it in between these. And you see I've got the liquid right to where the jar starts to taper because I want a wide surface for the SCOBY to fill. A SCOBY will naturally fill the whole surface that it's in. So if you were to brew in something wider, it would still cover the whole surface. Maybe not right away, but it will grow to cover the whole surface. What I've got here is my 2 batches of first fermentation Jun, and these are going to sit for 5 to 7 days, and I'm going to know how long they take by tasting it, starting on the 4th day. The hotter it is, the quicker it will brew. I have a feeling this one, because it was a smaller SCOBY and it had those holes in it, it's going to take longer than this one, which was that still bigger, fuller SCOBY. We will see. And I'm just going to cover these with a cloth. You want air to get to them. That is very important. It needs air to grow that healthy bacteria and yeast and populate and eat the sugars of the tea. So I'm going to cover these with a cloth somewhere safe on my counter and let them sit. And this is that second fermentation. As I mentioned, I'm going to let it sit for 3 days and then it is ready to drink. And when this is done and is ready to get put into its second fermentation, it's going to be at the part of the process that this video was when it began. So you come full circle and you just go in a process like that, always around first fermentation to second fermentation, and you retain some of this to be the starter for the next batch is what I'm going to be doing the next time coming up. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you learned a lot about Jun. I just thought of one more thing I wanted to make sure was super clear. When you are adding the SCOBY into your second fermentation, you want to make sure the tea is 90 degrees or less, because anything above 90 degrees will start to harm the beneficial yeast and bacteria that exist and live in the SCOBY because they're probiotics. So just like your probiotics, you keep them in the fridge, you don't get them too hot. It's the same idea and theory here. So just don't ever put your SCOBY into that hot tea or it's going to kill it.